The palace's cat found herself in a situation of utter helplessness when dramatic circumstances took a sudden turn. She could not protect her young from the impending threat. And at that moment, when it seemed as though all hope was lost, behold, who arrived just in time to help. The events that unfolded afterward will deeply touch anyone who hears of them. An unusual sound cut through the silence, through which a stifled moan pierced, as if emanating from the very depths of the forest. This sound was unlike any Gleb had ever heard. It contained a disturbing mix of terror and hopelessness. Abandoning his planned rounds of his section, Gleb listened intently, trying to pinpoint the source of this call. It seemed the sound was coming from a gnarled old tree that stood tall at the edge of a marshy area. The cry grew louder with each passing second, and hopelessness seemed to plead for someone's rescue. Mixed feelings of anxiety and interest seized Gleb, and he moved swiftly towards the source of the sound, abandoning his equipment. His heart pounded faster, a mix of courage and apprehension stirring within him. The sounds became clearer and clearer, breaking the night's silence as he approached the tree. The dense undergrowth began to part, and suddenly a striking scene unfolded before Gleb. In a small clearing, entirely flooded, a little predator, staying afloat with its last strength, was struggling against the water. In its frightened eyes, full of terror, hopelessness could be read as it desperately tried to get out of the water. With each moment, its attempts became less successful, strength leaving it. Gleb froze, realizing it was a palace's cat, renowned for its caution and ferocity, especially in critical circumstances. Moreover, palace's cats are known as excellent swimmers. A thought struck him as to why the mother cat wasn't hurrying to come to the rescue of her little one. Gleb noticed a metallic gleam nearby. The wild animal's paw was firmly bound in a chain left by malevolent poachers, and this chain was attached to the trunk of a darkened tree. In the female's eyes, expressing pain and terror, a silent plea for rescue could be read. She fought desperately, straining to break free, but the trap held her too firmly. Gleb's heart ached painfully with pity. He understood that for the little creature, he remained the only hope for survival. Without delay, the man approached the very edge of the water. Rolling up his sleeves and taking off his shoes, he stepped into the muddy shallows. The icy water penetrated to the bone. "My child, I am here." The man's tone seemed to bring some calm to the frightened creature. The little predator stopped moving. Its convulsive attempts to swim weakened. Carefully taking the wet and trembling little body in his arms, Gleb carried it to dry land as soon as he reached a safe distance. Pressing the little one to himself, the man tried to transfer his body heat to it. However, he clearly realized that he had no right to abandon the mother cat in such a hopeless situation. Approaching the wild animal, Gleb carefully examined the chain's fastening, looking for a way to free her without causing her pain. Suddenly, there was a crackle of twigs underfoot, and human voices were heard coming from the depths of the forest, which shattered the silence of the night. Gleb froze solid, realizing that the trespassers were very likely returning to this spot. The situation turned extremely dangerous, and lightning-fast reaction was required. Making sure his hiding place was secure, the man hid the little palace's cat among the dense bushes. Following this, Gleb took up a waiting position at some distance to observe the unfolding events, without leaving the shadows. From his hidden position, Gleb saw two male figures, whose clothing was dirty and worn, armed with rifles and carrying a set of traps, as well as chains carelessly slung over their shoulders. Their voices, sounding muffled and harsh, were at times interrupted by laughter, which testified to their conviction that they were not being watched. Gleb managed to catch snippets of phrases from their conversation as the trespassers approached the tree where the cat was chained to the trunk. "First, examine this palace's cat," a command rang out from one of them, who was pointing at the suffering creature. "You can get a good sum for this animal," he added. Rage began to boil in Gleb's chest. His fists involuntarily clenched, but he clearly realized a direct confrontation at this moment could have tragic consequences both for him personally and for the wildcat. Setting aside emotional impulses, he preferred to act with cold calculation, closely watching every movement of the unwelcome visitors. Chained by the tree trunk, the female Pallas's cat, upon seeing the men, began to strain against the fetters forcefully, accompanying this with a low growl. One of the trespassers took out a set of keys from his pocket with the intention of checking the strength of the set trap. Seeing this, Gleb realized that a tiny chance had arisen to use their own tools against them. He picked up a small stone from the ground and threw it towards the dense bushes located at some distance. The resulting rustling sound instantly drew the attention of the trespassers. "Hear something?" whispered one of them, looking warily towards where the sound was coming from. "Need to check it out," replied the other with a nod, aiming his weapon at the thicket. While the trespassers were busy searching for the source of the noise, Gleb silently slipped to where they had dropped their equipment. Among the scattered items, he came across a heavy wrench. Understanding that very little time remained, he quickly headed to the tree with the aim of freeing the wild cat. But the steps of the approaching trespassers forced him to act. Maintaining his composure, Gleb left his hiding place, clutching the wrench in his hand, and said in a firm tone, "Get out! You have no place here." The leader of the trespassers, grinning, replied mockingly, "Do you seriously think you can scare us? This is our land, and this Pallas's cat belongs to us." Gleb took a position between the armed men and the wild animal. His face became firm and resolute. "I won't let you take her," he said with such determination that the trespassers froze for a brief moment. Understanding what his advantage was, Gleb added, "You are not the only ones here. Ranger patrols regularly move through this area. Do you think you can avoid meeting them?" The mention of rangers caused obvious apprehension in the trespassers. After a brief but tense exchange of glances, one of them said quietly, "There's no point risking it." Casting a final glance at Gleb, the men quickly disappeared into the dense forest. Only when they had left the spot could Gleb breathe freely and felt the tension subside. He approached the wild animal, which was still growling, but with less aggression, and carefully removed the chain that had firmly bound her to the tree. The freed creature first slowly surveyed its surroundings, and then quickly headed towards the bushes, making soft, calling sounds. The little Pallas's cat responded to her call, darting out from its hiding place and rushing towards its mother. Their reunion was moving. The animals rubbed noses and purred with contentment. Gleb, who witnessed this scene, felt immense relief. This day had not been lived in vain. He wondered if he would ever again have the chance to see these beautiful creatures. However, as the future showed, his wish was destined to be fulfilled quite quickly. Several months passed since the day Gleb had managed to rescue the wild cat from the tenacious grip of the malevolent poachers. The dense forest was enveloped in a light haze on a foggy morning. As Gleb was carrying out one of his usual rounds, moving along winding forest paths, the gradually dispersing mist revealed to his sight a thin thread of smoke rising into the sky, like a signal indicating someone's presence. Cautiously dropping to the ground, he used the dense crowns as cover so as to get closer unnoticed. Sounds coming from where the smoke was rising mingled with the rustling of leaves, forming an almost inaudible multi-voiced murmur. Gleb managed to catch quiet voices. Hiding in the bushes, he watched the unfolding scene. Such a picture opened up to his gaze. 3 male figures, looking like coarse poachers, were placing traps and nets, while 2 hunting rifles lay carelessly leaning against the trunk of one of the trees. Gleb understood that the situation required extreme caution. Being unarmed, having only a small knife he always carried with him, he realized that a direct confrontation could lead to terrible consequences. The most reasonable course of action was to retreat, so as to call for backup later. But unfortunately, Providence decided otherwise. At the very moment when Gleb was backing away, his foot inadvertently touched a dry twig, and its quiet snap, resembling a gunshot, shattered the morning silence. The men instantly became alert and more vigilant. Holding his breath, Gleb froze motionless, but he realized that his presence had been noticed. His heart pounded with frantic speed in his chest, but he managed to quickly assess the situation. The armed men, without delay, rushed straight towards him. The fog, which until this moment had hindered visibility, now proved to be on his side. It concealed Gleb's movements, providing an opportunity to take cover in the depths of the dense forest. Increasing his pace, Gleb felt his breathing quicken and become labored, but he did not stop running, increasing the distance between him and his pursuers. However, the feeling of relief did not last long. Suddenly, someone's rough hand seized his shoulder, spun him around abruptly, and pressed him against the trunk of the nearest tree. The suddenness took his breath away, and a sinister grin blossomed on the face of one of the trespassers, apparently the leader. "Did you really think you could follow us and just get away with it?" he said mockingly. Accusations followed one after another. The trespassers were furious because, thanks to Gleb's actions, their traps and nets were constantly empty. At the moment, one of them tied his hands with a strong rope. Phrases were uttered that made Gleb's blood run cold. "You've bothered us for too long. It's time to finish this off once and for all." After his limbs were bound, they dragged him further into the forest depths, away from the well-trodden paths where someone might accidentally appear. Every movement they made, every gesture intensified Gleb's feeling of fear with each passing moment. He realized that his existence was under threat and could only hope for a miracle. Reaching a deserted and hidden spot, the leader of the trespassers suddenly raised his hand, giving the signal for everyone else to stop. "This will be just right. No one will find him here," he said with grim conviction in his voice. While Gleb was mentally preparing for the worst possible outcome, a sudden rustle heard among the dense bushes drew the attention of everyone present. From the semi-darkness emerged the wild cat. Her gaze, full of focused energy, was fixed on Gleb. Several months had passed, but she had not forgotten the man who had once granted her salvation. Recognizing his scent and hearing his voice, and letting out a loud roar, the wild cat lunged to attack with astonishing speed. Struck by the sudden threat, the trespassers attempted to flee, letting go of Gleb. After the predators in human form were forced to retreat, the wild cat redirected her attention to Gleb, who at that very moment was struggling to untie the strong knots. She approached him slowly and carefully, touching the rope with her nose as if showing a desire to assist. Gleb, understanding her intention, allowed her to bite through the strong bindings, using her powerful fangs. After a few moments, he was free again. Getting to his feet, he turned to his savior, and his heart overflowed with a feeling of deep gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, carefully extending his hand towards her. The wild cat looked intently at him. In her eyes could be read tension combined with calm resolve. It was at this moment that a deep understanding was established between them. Man and wild beast realized the common threat to which they were exposed and the protection they could offer each other. As if saying goodbye, the wildcat nodded to Gleb, and turning, slowly disappeared among the dense foliage. Her obligation was fulfilled. In the days that followed, Gleb often found himself lost in thought, looking towards the forest depths, remembering his extraordinary rescuer. He knew she was still there, among the trees. The connection that had arisen between them once again reminded him of how powerful a person's influence can be when they decide to protect the natural world. Each time he recalls this story, Gleb cannot help but smile, for every good deed sooner or later inevitably comes back as good.